Why is it okay for Tom Brady or Derek Jeter, Kobe, or any other all-time great athlete to have a retirement tour, but it's not okay for Aaron Rodgers? What's up, everybody? Welcome into a new edition of Moving the Goalposts. I'm Nick DiMartino. I'm riding solo today. You can follow us across social media. This podcast is across social media at MTGPETB. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart. And you can watch all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network. You can listen to all Empty the Bench shows on etbpodcast.com, and you can you can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure to like and subscribe. And this show, Moving the Goalposts, is presented by Playback. Stay tuned for later in the show to find out more. All right, so it is now a much slower time in sports, a little harder to do this show. Now that the NBA finals are over, there's this new story that came out, which is kind of right up my alley because it involves gambling. Malik Beasley is now the subject of a federal investigation involving gambling on basketball. Malik Beasley is on the Pistons, and I think this, from my understanding, is from the season, not this past season, but the season before, the 2023 to 2024 season when he was on Milwaukee. And in fairness to Malik Beasley, I'm very much a believer in due process of law, and he has a right to defend himself in court, and he has not been charged. Let me be clear. Malik Beasley has not been charged with any crimes. He's merely the subject of an investigation. And apparently in this investigation, it was the result of very irregular betting patterns on some prop bets, not this past season, but the season before, from my understanding. Okay. So according to the ESPN report, at least one prominent U.S. sportsbook detected unusually heavy betting interest on Beasley's statistics beginning around January 2024. A gambling industry source told ESPN's David Perdum. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. So that is, it really could just be that this ends up the same way as Terry Rozier. Because don't forget, back in February, there was a big bombshell story about Terry Rozier being the subject of a gambling investigation. And that doesn't seem to have gone anywhere. Maybe it will. We don't really know. I guess in a weird way, look, you never know. There could be a situation where he could be the subject of an investigation, and just because there was irregular betting patterns on his prop bets doesn't mean he was the one doing it. I think there will just have to be more. I think there will have to be. I think we just kind of have to wait and see, what this investigation turns up. Because if it turns out that he was betting against himself, that will be easy to catch. First of all, if you're a professional athlete and you're betting on your own sport, you are the biggest idiot alive. You can't be dumber in today's day and age to bet on your own sport on a betting app. At least I'm old enough to remember when gambling was very much underground. And it used to be that you can kind of get away with it a little more if it's underground. There's been many cases when there's been a lot of scandals when gambling was underground, but it's probably easier to get away with it than if you're doing it on DraftKings. Like if you look at like the Black Sox, for instance, it's probably if you look at the Black Sox, it's probably like a lot easier to get. I mean, I know they didn't get away with it, but if you're gambling with like organized crime, it's probably easier to get away with that than it is to get away with like gambling on DraftKings or FanDuel or any of the apps, because now that because then it's very much above ground. They can track your location, and it's probably not all that difficult for them to figure out who you are. So gambling as a professional athlete on your own sport, just like Calvin Ridley did, is one of the dumbest things you can do. Just like with Jonte Porter. Jonte Porter was betting on he wasn't betting with like the mafia or anything underground where you might not be caught. I mean, you're probably going to get caught now if you gamble on your own sport. It's especially bad if you bet against yourself. I mean, gambling on your own sport is bad. Like what Calvin Ridley did, he deserved to get suspended for a whole year, but it's not like he bet against himself. He just placed a wager on a game that had nothing to do with him, which you shouldn't do, but it's not quite as bad as like what Jonte Porter did, where he claimed he had like an eye injury and took himself out of the game so he would hit the under. Like he just bet against himself. It looks like that could be the case here, but you never know with like irregular betting patterns, like with prop bets, because not a lot of people make prop bets anyway. So I guess it's not impossible for there to be like some type of irregular pattern, because these are prop bets. You would never see that with like a spread. Now, if that were to happen with a spread, that would be a much bigger deal. But that doesn't seem to be. But like with a prop bet, I could see why that might happen, even if a player wasn't doing that. Now, if it turns out he's innocent in all of this, just like with Ohtani, because with Ohtani, like Ohtani totally turned out to be completely innocent and he was totally scammed. But it really just looked like he was guilty to the average person. And if if an athlete is under the investigation for gambling on their own sport or like throwing games or whatever, it really looks, no matter what ends up turning up, it really looks like they're guilty right away. Like that's really just what it looks like. And, if the only good news about it, if he's innocent, is that we live in such a fast news cycle that people eventually forget about it. Just like people seems to have forgotten about Terry Rozier, and that was 5 months ago. And people seem to forget about that. So I guess that would be one thing if he's innocent. But the thing is that like gambling on sports, even though it's a little bit less taboo than it once was, players betting on their own sport is still extremely tabooed. I mean, just look at how long it took Pete Rose to get into the Hall of Fame, the all-time hits leader, and they waited for him to die before they put him into the Hall of Fame. So, I mean, like, it still is so taboo that your reputation can never really recover from it. Like, it's like being accused of murder, in a sense. Like, I'm not saying it's on the same level morally, but, like, your reputation takes a similar type of hit. Like, Ray Lewis will never be viewed the same, like, ever since that murder charge, which was very suspicious, by the way. He buried his clothes, and we don't know what actually, like it still looks very suspicious. But the point I'm making is that it's a very similar type of level. I mean, by the way, I would argue betting on your own sport, the reputation that an athlete, like the reputation hit, is greater than a lot of crimes. I mean, like if a player like drives drunk, gets a DUI or something like that, their reputation can recover. I mean, Jameis Winston was accused of sexual assault multiple times, and people just like, it's not that people forget about it exactly, but it's like, I feel like his reputation kind of recovered, and now he's like this jolly sort of goofy quarterback that we can all kind of laugh at. And, he was accused of some really heinous things. I'm not saying he was definitely guilty, but he was accused multiple times, and not just in college, also in the NFL. So I am very careful about this because I don't know the type of reputation. I don't know how true these accusations are. And even if they're false, an athlete's reputation takes such a big hit. I mean, look at Ohtani. I mean, like, he's still the punchline of so many gambling sort of jokes. Now, I understand he's like one of, like, arguably the best player in baseball or whatever, but like, I feel like the reputation hit that you take, that athletes take when it comes to betting on sports, is just so, it is so huge. Now, so we just have to wait and see what this investigation brings up. Now, a lot of people might blame this on, like a lot of people are anti-gambling. I am not anti-gambling. I view gambling the same way I view drugs and alcohol. I think it's okay to do as long as you do it in moderation and you can control yourself. It's a vice, but I think everybody should be allowed to do it. And for me, gambling, I would argue, gambling, I would say, is kind of my vice. Like, I enjoy gambling. And I'm not addicted to it or anything like that, but I really do enjoy gambling. That would be my vice. And, you know, that's just like, I don't think gambling's inherently bad. It's just inherently kind of like risky. And you obviously don't want players or coaches betting on their own sports, obviously. Now, a lot of people are making this about gambling being legal and all of these things. And all of like these scandals that it seems like are going on, like that seem to be popping up. People make it about gambling being legal, and you know that's the reason this is happening. And I think that's half true, but leaving out the rest of it, which is that I think the fact that gambling is legalized makes it easier to catch these people. I think it makes it easier to catch when it happens because it's not completely underground. Just because it was underground before doesn't mean it wasn't happening. It's just not as easy to find. When gambling is controlled by the mafia, it's a lot harder to actually catch athletes or coaches or whoever betting on their own sports, as opposed to if you do it on a betting app, which is why I said you're an idiot if you actually bet on your own sport on an actual app like DraftKings, FanDuel, or whatever. But a lot of people are making this, because this happens all the time, and people said the same thing about Ohtani or any of these scandals, or that like it's about gambling being legalized and normalized, and that's not it. Because first of all, the problem, I don't like that frame of argument, because the problem has nothing to do with gambling being legal or normalized. It has to do with, the problem is the athletes betting on their own sports. Liam, who is a frequent guest on the show, has made, so I don't want to steal his analogy, but his analogy is perfect, is that bartenders can't drink behind the bar. You can't be drunk working as a bartender. And that arguably, now, if bartenders do get drunk while they're working, which I'm sure does happen a lot, that does have to do with drinking alcohol being legalized and normalized or whatever. But the problem is not that. The problem is you're being irresponsible behind the bar. And blaming this on the NBA for being in like cahoots with betting apps and things like that, I don't have an issue with that at all. They are advertising, the NBA, the MLB, the NFL, they're all advertising their product, and a lot of their fans enjoy betting. I enjoy betting on games. Betting on games makes it more fun to watch a lot of the times, because you have a greater stake in it. Now, I only bet 10, maybe $15. I don't bet a lot of money, but I still enjoy betting on it, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's not the problem. And people often say it's hypocritical, but it's not hypocritical at all. There's nothing remotely hypocritical about it. The leagues are very, very clear about this. You cannot bet on your own sport. Everybody knows this. So it's not hypocritical for the NBA to promote like betting on their games for fans, and also punish athletes for betting on their own sport. It's completely different. All right. We are the patrons as fans, and the players are the bartenders. And in fact, it's actually probably substantially worse, athletes betting on their own sport, than bartenders getting drunk. being a bit inebriated behind the bar. Like, I would argue it's actually probably substantially worse. So no, I don't buy into the narrative that it's hypocritical or that has to do with legalized gambling. I support legalized gambling. That doesn't mean that this is okay. Like, obviously, there's a difference. I support legalized alcohol, but I don't support, like, I think everybody who's of age should be allowed to drink alcohol, but you shouldn't be allowed to drink and drive. It's the same exact concept. Moving the goalposts is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, rubbing your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. So the Greg Hill show up in Boston. I want to talk about this. They ripped Aaron Rodgers. Now, there's two things. First of all, I love Boston sports talk radio. Outside of New York, Boston has historically some of the best sports talk radio because Boston is a great sports city. And they also have obnoxious fans. Like New York, Philly, and Boston. Like, my theory about Boston is that Boston is just a winning version of Philly. Like, you know how you might know two different people and one is just like a rich guy's version of the other guy. Like, one guy does all the things that this other guy would do if he was really rich. That's kind of what Boston and Philly are like. Boston is like a winning version of Philly. When it comes to the sports, they're both small cities that are fairly close to New York, and they're both pretty big sports cities. And Boston's just like, they win in sports more. They're a little nicer of a city. It's a much more desirable place to live. Things like that. So I think Boston and Philly are very similar. It's kind of a tangent, and I love Boston sports radio. I have no connection to Boston. I've never lived in the area, but I used to listen when I was in college. I used to listen to every episode of Kirk and Callahan just on the podcast. I would listen to every single episode. And this show is the Greg Hill show is the replacement of Kirk and Callahan, which was actually has been on for quite some time. So they're ripping Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers, it seems like it's his last. He seemed to suggest that it was his last season. And I do have some sound for this. Here is the Greg Hill show ripping Aaron Rodgers. It's a couple minutes clip. I'll pause it. I'll pause it a few times. That they're just ripping Aaron Rodgers. By the way, I think that, like, Aaron Rodgers, just a weird just an observation, not really a point, but like, Aaron Rodgers is probably the only athlete that will likely be viewed, that will do a retirement tour and be viewed with like scorn. Like a Hall of Fame all-time great athlete that will be viewed with, like, in a weird way by the media with like scorn. But here's the Greg Hill show talking about the Aaron Rodgers retirement tour.
Give me a break with I just wanted to do this for fun for, my final. It's been 20 years. Ha ha, chuckle, chuckle. No, you did it so that you could tell everybody you're retiring and have a farewell tour. That's why you did it. You're an egomaniac, a narcissist.
Is that how you feel about announcing it before? Like, you don't like the Derek Jeter farewell tour around
Big Papa. You know what? I'm going to be so for real right now. I'm being a hypocrite. Like, I would probably, if I was a professional athlete, I would do this. If Tom Brady did this, I'd be like, he should get his flowers. Everybody should do this. The fact that it's Aaron Rodgers, that's why I hate it.
Yeah.
But at least I'm honest.
No, I agree 100%. This guy is loathsome. It's beneath the Steelers to bring this guy in. It is pathetic. I hate that Tomlin's on board with it. Like, he's not good anymore. Like,
we'll find out week 3.
Remove all the other nonsense, right? Even if it's just the quarterback. He's not good. He was not good the last several years. The Packers got better with Jordan Love.
Okay. First of all, the whole he's not good type of thing, and this is beneath the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers are a storied franchise, but they haven't been good in a long time. I mean, what to say? I mean to say like this is beneath the Steelers. I mean, what position are the Steelers in? You think the Steelers are a good franchise? The Steelers have been like spinning their wheels for years. When's the last time the Steelers haven't won a playoff game in 8 years? They have not won a playoff game in 8 years. And they're not only are the Steelers not like winning playoff games, they're getting blown out. I mean, like to say that, like, oh, this is beneath the Steelers. How can the Steelers do this? Beneath the Steelers, who was their quarterback last year? Russell Wilson. Now, I'd probably prefer Russell Wilson over Aaron Rodgers right now, but it's like a past his prime Russell Wilson. So your quarterbacks last year were Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. This is a team that like never seems to get their offense right. And this is a team that is just not good. The Steelers are just not that good. So to say it's beneath the Steelers is just kind of ridiculous. I don't even, and so he's not good. I mean, he's not, first of all, obviously he's not what he used to be, but like he's also 41. Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old, coming off an Achilles injury last season. How about that context? How many 40-year-old how many quarterbacks over the age of 40 are actually that good? Like, what is the context there? You know who else wasn't good? Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning was pretty bad, and he was younger than Aaron Rodgers. Like to me, I don't know what it is. I don't know. Actually, I kind of know why, but I understand why, but I can't justify it. I can't justify this type of reaction to Aaron Rodgers where he's held to a completely different standard. I mean, people talk about Aaron Rodgers and criticize him for only winning one Super Bowl. He only won one Super Bowl with Green Bay. Only won one. Yeah, and David Chase only had one hit TV show. Like, I don't know what to like. That is such a weird argument. Like, not every. That's what most quarterbacks do. One Super Bowl, maybe two. I don't know why so many people seem to think that like there is a drastic difference between one Super Bowl and two Super Bowls, but not such a drastic difference between 0 Super Bowls and 1 Super Bowl. I mean, like Peyton Manning, people say the only other quarterback that was criticized in this fashion was Peyton Manning. And that's only because Peyton Manning was so amazing in the regular season that he set the ball, that he was held to a higher standard. I think it's a similar type of thing with Aaron Rodgers, although I also think it has a lot to do with his personality. Now, to me, what Courtney Cox, who was one of the co-hosts on the show, was just saying was just so blatantly hypocritical, which he just admitted. How is it like narcissistic if Aaron Rodgers does it, but not if anybody else does it? Like, I don't get this. Why is it okay for Tom Brady or Derek Jeter, Kobe, or any other all-time great athlete to have a retirement tour, but it's not okay for Aaron Rodgers? Every all-time great, or at least most of them, I don't think Tim Duncan did because he's a very, like, down to earth and humble, and I don't think he wanted to have that, but, like, I think everybody actually forgets that Tim Duncan actually retired the same season Kobe did. But why is it okay for every other like all-time great athlete to have a retirement tour, or all-time great head coach to have a retirement tour, but it's not okay for Aaron Rodgers? Like why is he the only one who's not allowed to? Just because of his quirky personality? I mean, look, there's nothing about Aaron Rodgers that even seems to be all that bad outside of like some weird personal life decisions that he makes. And certain things about his personality. But to me, like, I just think everybody should be held to the same standard. I mean, like, there are certain personality traits that he seems to possess that might seem a bit narcissistic, but it's not fair to say that it's narcissistic if he does a retirement tour and he's the only one who's not allowed to do a retirement tour. Everybody else can do a retirement tour, but not Aaron Rodgers. Everybody else, Drew Brees, Brett Favre, they can win one Super Bowl. Jim Kelly can win 0 Super Bowls. Damn, like like, they can win one Super Bowl and not get criticized for it. But Aaron Rodgers, 1 Super Bowl is just not enough. And by the way, Peyton Manning at his best only won 1 Super Bowl too. He did win 2 Super Bowls technically, but at his best, he only won 1. Like Peyton Manning, the Peyton Manning that we know when he was actually great in that like 15 to 20 year span, he only won one Super Bowl. He won the second Super Bowl in spite of him. The Broncos won the second Super Bowl in spite of him, not because of him. So I think that this whole Aaron Rodgers only won one Super Bowl thing is a silly sort of criticism. By the way, that has nothing to do with how great he is. Dan Marino won no Super Bowls. Jim Kelly, Dan Fouts, they won 0 Super Bowls. And they're still all-time great players. Not quite as great as Aaron Rodgers, but all-time great players. Aaron Rodgers is maybe a top 5 quarterback of all time. It's hard to measure. That's a conversation for a different day. But like, and I understand here they're not talking about ring culture, but I think it's all sort of connected in a sense about like this anti-Aaron Rodgers stuff. Anyway, I'll keep
Anybody
going.
dispute that?
No.
They're a good football team with Jordan Love.
I mean, did they miss Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay?
No.
Jordan Love panned out to be a good. Looks like he's going to be a good quarterback. Right. So yeah, they didn't miss out on it.
And so, I mean, look at, I don't know. I can't figure it out. And the Steelers' defense is really good.
Yeah. That's why you go there.
But no, I understand why he wanted to go there. I can't figure out why the Steelers, they've been almost as bad as the Patriots post-Brady as they have been post-Roethlisberger. I mean, using that first-round pick on Kenny Pickett.
Right. See, that's the thing with the Steelers. They're a playoff team, and they're just saying, if we can just find the right quarterback.
Well, they had no other choice, really. He was their only choice.
Yeah.
It is kind of a douche move. Wait, training camp hasn't even started, and you need to declare that this is it. This is the last. If you want to ask me about it when I come to your city, feel free to ask me about it. Feel free to bother all the other guys also all season long when you ask them about my last season.
That right there. All of his teammates now, that's your quarterback where you're going to be hearing about it game after game, and you're just trying to win. That's it. You're just trying to win. You're trying to make the Pittsburgh Steelers the best team imaginable, and now it's the Aaron Rodgers show.
Okay. That could be said about every single athlete that does that. That could be said about you could have said the same thing about any athlete that has done that. I mean, Kobe, the same thing could have been said about Kobe's retirement tour. Kobe had this huge retirement tour, and for me, like, I'm generally for retirement tours if the athlete is good enough, obviously. And Aaron Rodgers is unquestionably good enough to have a retirement tour. Clearly one of the 10 best quarterbacks of all time, one of the best quarterbacks, certainly one of the 5 best quarterbacks I've ever seen play. I mean, probably the 4th best quarterback I've ever seen. And he's good enough to have a retirement tour. Like, nobody would even dispute that, but because it's Aaron Rodgers, now you're going with the narrative of like, well, it's a distraction and his teammates are going to be asked about this. What do you think happens every retirement tour? The same thing could have been said about Derek Jeter having a retirement tour. And by the way, Derek Jeter got way more attention for it. I guarantee you that Derek Jeter got way more attention for his retirement tour than Aaron Rodgers is going to get for his. I can promise you that. How many commercials did we see with Derek Jeter and number 2 and respect with the S spelled as number 2? So, and nobody had an issue with that, including me, even though I'm a Yankee hater. I still don't have issues. I don't have any issue with that because Derek Jeter is an all-time great. That's why I'm okay with it. And also, has played his entire career with the Yankees, won multiple championships. So all of that actually, like, I don't take issue with it. I don't at all. But you also have to be consistent. Be consistent. If you didn't have an issue when any other athlete did it, I mean, Tom Brady retired and then 40 days later came back to the NFL. I mean, to me, I think athletes retiring and then coming back is substantially more irritating than athletes saying, this is it, I'm hanging it up, and then having this sort of like retirement tour. I think most people kind of agree with that generally. Like, when athletes just like Michael Jordan retiring twice and coming back, to me is like way worse than just saying like, I'm going to hang it up and that's just it after 1 year, after one retirement. That's to me, I would rather have that than I would rather have the athlete do the retirement tour. And by the way, people forget that, like, you talk about narcissistic. You want to talk about being narcissistic when it comes to retirement tours and things like that. Don't forget, Kobe had his retirement tour, and don't forget his last game. He scored he put up. I don't remember what it was, but he scored he took 60 shots. Hold on, I could probably pull up the stats. He put up in Kobe's last game played, the last game he played in his career, which I vividly remember. He scored 60 points on 50 shots. 60 points on 50 shots. By the way, you want to talk about Aaron Rodgers sucking that year? Sucking now? I mean, Kobe sucked his final season in the NBA. His last probably 2 seasons, he was really bad. And he was younger than Aaron Rodgers. He scored 60 points on 50 shots. Now, I don't take issue with that at all. I don't take issue with that. I am for it. I am for celebrating greatness. I am for celebrating Kobe Bryant. I was for the retirement tour. I'm for all that. It was a meaningless game otherwise. It wasn't a playoff game. The Lakers weren't going anywhere. It didn't matter. But just as an ode to Kobe of taking his reputation of taking a lot of shots and scoring a lot of points, I thought it was the perfect way for Kobe to go out. And I'm for it for Aaron Rodgers also. I'm also for it with Aaron Rodgers. I am being consistent. I know it sounds crazy, but I am being consistent. I do want to talk about the Knicks Dawn Staley rumors, which I think I don't even know where these rumors come from. It's why I don't listen to rumors very much, because I think a lot of them are bullshit. So there were these rumors of Dawn Staley becoming the next Knicks head coach. I don't know where these came from. Dawn Staley is the women's basketball coach at South Carolina, probably the best head coach in women's college basketball. Just because she's a great women's college basketball coach doesn't mean she'd be a good doesn't mean she'd be a good NBA head coach. I'm not saying she couldn't be, but that's 2 levels removed. It's women's basketball and also college. College and pros are different enough. I mean, there's been so many great college head coaches that haven't really panned out at all in the pros, in football and basketball. And in fact, there's very few, in football, for instance, there's very few head coaches that were good enough that have had success in both. I mean, Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll are the only 2. And just because she's a great women's basketball coach in college doesn't mean she can do it with men at the pro level. The games are just too different. There's really no way of knowing. And also, just there's probably a lot more top tier talent and head coaches in the men's game than the women's game. I mean, the women's game is 50 years behind the men's game in basketball. So it's just the fact that she's so great in college, it's not a given that she can do it at the pro level. And that, like I said, that's 2 levels. That's 2 huge differences. On the men's and women, I don't know a ton about women's basketball, but I'm sure that most experts would tell you that the men's game and the women's game are really substantially different. Just like college and the pros are substantially different. So I don't know where. I think it's probably a bunch of bullshit. I saw that it looks like Mike Brown might end up being the next head coach of the Knicks. I don't know what this franchise is doing, but they're just a laughing stock. The Knicks have become a complete laughing stock. You're going to fire your head coach and maybe make a move to get Durant or Giannis. The Knicks shut down potentially getting Durant, which maybe I would have been in favor of depending on what they had to give up, but to just not even like consider Durant, I think it's just batshit crazy. You're crazy to not even consider Durant. And this team is just incomplete. This team is just embarrassing, completely embarrassing. And yeah, I guess that those Dawn Staley rumors just were kind of a bunch of nonsense. Speaking of players that are going to be retiring soon, LeBron opted into his $52 million contract with the Lakers. I don't know what this means exactly. Typically, I mean, lately that's what's been happening. Players have been opting in. But I don't know if this is going to be LeBron's last year, but if you want to talk about somebody who's going to have a retirement tour, LeBron 100% will have 1,000% will have a retirement tour. I mean, when it's his last season, we're going to know. We're probably going to know before the season even starts. And the thing with LeBron is that, like, I think LeBron and Brady have raised the bar, the expectation of athletes aging to almost like an unrealistic degree. That, like, because LeBron and Brady were able to do it at such a high level after they turned 40, that it turned into like that, like, other athletes were expected to be this great. Whereas, like, most athletes by their late 30s, depending on the sport and the position they play, are going to fall. Maybe not quarterbacks quite as much, but most will fall off. Most basketball players will not be as great in their late 30s or into their 40s. Most quarterbacks will never, almost no other quarterback will be as great as Brady was. Almost no other basketball player will be as great in their 40s as LeBron. There's almost no way. And I think the Lakers could compete for a championship. It's just that they play in the West, and there's so many great teams in the West. Maybe they probably just need another big man. I think that's one of the biggest things. They need some rim protector. The Lakers need another rim protector. And I think I think the Lakers could end up winning another championship, though I don't think it's very likely. I think what most likely is going to happen. I don't think this is going to be LeBron's last season, by the way. I think he'll probably play another year. I think maybe in 2 years will be LeBron's last season. And I don't know if LeBron will. Athletes usually don't go the Seinfeld route of going out on top. Like Jerry Seinfeld says, he ended Seinfeld after 9 seasons because he wanted to go out on top. And I think that's smart. Like Friends, that show lasted for like 10 seasons, and that was way too long. They were just dragging it out for way too long. And I generally athletes don't go out that way. I mean, yeah, Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl, but in terms of his play individually, he was horrible at that point. LeBron, I don't know what he's going to do, but something tells me he's not going to go out on top. I mean, Kobe didn't go out on top. Very few athletes, actually, all-time great athletes, really go out on top. The only player that kind of went out on top may have been Tim Duncan, but he was really declining. Very few athletes actually go out on top. I think there will be some decline. I don't think LeBron will just go out on top. I think he's going to try to play until he really just can't, which is really just what most athletes do. All right, that's the show this week. I'll be back next week. I'll be back next week. I probably won't be going solo then, but yeah, this is Moving the Goalpost. I'm Nick DiMartino. You can follow us across social media at ETB Network. In this podcast, across social media at MTGP ETB, and you can follow me on Twitter at Nick DMart. So see you guys then.